this week, we're going to bring you something a little different. We're replaying some of our greatest hits, some of the shows you like the best. So check them out if you haven't heard them before, or listen again. Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Amanda Lamb. In today's deep dive conversation with Travis Fain, we're going to talk about recycling. Welcome to the program, Travis.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, I know sometimes recycling can seem overwhelming. I know it is to me at times because we don't know the exact rules. Does this feeling keep people from doing it?
I think so. And I mean, I kind of decided that I was going to show people, all right, look, here's what you can and can't recycle. There are all these different programs around the triangle and around the state, but they all have pretty similar rules, and the rules are pretty easy to get hold of. So the idea was, well, let's do a story and let's make it digestible for people so that they'll see this, maybe they clip it, and just remember, all right, yes to this, no to that. Let's make this simpler.
So it sounds like the idea for the story came from your own personal experience. I mean, you're taking the recycling out to the curb once a week.
Right. And I think a good rule in journalism is if you have a question, you're not the only one. So I'd be sitting in my kitchen and the orange juice would be done. And we buy orange juice in what's called a gable top container. You might be familiar with it, like a milk container. But these days they have, they're made of paper, but there's like this what's called a thermoplastic coating. And they have a little plastic cap, a little spout. So it's multiple materials. Can I just throw that in my recycling bin? And I'm staring at it and I'm like, well, these are three different things. Can they all be recycled together? And do I have to rinse this thing out? And the answer is no, I don't have to rinse it out. And yes, I can just toss the thing in there. But I did have to drill down a little bit to find that out. So that was the opening of it is, what do I do with this orange juice container?
And I would imagine that different municipalities have different rules. So you kind of have to know where you are and what the rules are based on where you live.
Yeah, but there are a lot of similarities, and we break that down in the story. But also, most of these programs have really easily Googleable lists. Like if you just kind of Google where you live and recycling program rules, it's almost always going to pop up. There's going to be a list of things you can and can't put in your curbside. There's going to be a list of, all right, we don't take the following things curbside, but here are the locations where you can drop it off if you want to. And a lot of times the drop-offs are about size or about if it's an electronic device, you can't just put it in your recycling bin. You have to take it somewhere. But this information was all really easy to get.
Okay, so let's just look at the basic stuff. What are the basic things that people can and should recycle, and do they need to be washed?
Almost nothing needs to be washed. The only thing where people broke was, do I have to wash a peanut butter jar? Do I have to and I had one facility here in Raleigh. It's run by a company called Sunoco, and they said, nah, just finish your peanut butter, toss that thing right in there. A woman named Wendy Worley, who kind of is a coordinator statewide for recycling. She works for the Department of Environmental Quality, so she works for the state, said, that might not be the case everywhere. So, but if you kind of use peanut butter as the top level there, the dirtiest thing, and you go below peanut butter, you really don't need to rinse it out unless you just want to give it a quick rinse. You definitely don't have to rinse like soap, like if you're throwing away detergent, although we try to use as little plastic as we can in my house, because this stuff is recyclable, but so much of the plastic that we use doesn't get recycled. People throw it away.
Ends up in the landfill.
Or there's not enough of a market for it. There are all these different types of plastic. For example, Solo cups, the typical red cup. Well, that's two different types of plastic bonded together. That's actually not recyclable right now.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't know that. So,
styrofoam is not recyclable.
I did know that. I live in a condo, and we have big signs about styrofoam. So the things that are recyclable, glass, plastic, cardboard, like your Amazon boxes. And
Absolutely.
You should break those down.
You can break them down, but you don't necessarily have to. You don't have to remove the packing tape. You don't have to remove the labels. I was spending time taking labels off of things. That turns out was not a smart use of my time because it's totally unnecessary, because these things, they get separated by these big machines, and then eventually they're kind of turned into the fibers. Like plastic, for example, ends up getting shredded and then washed after it's been shredded. So that's why it's not super important to have it all the way clean. Although you don't want to leave food in it. I don't want to give people the idea that you can just, if you got coleslaw, you cannot throw out half a thing of coleslaw.
Right.
You need to empty that out.
But you can, if it's not a styrofoam container, if it's a plastic container, a takeout container, and as long as it's empty, you can recycle that.
Absolutely, unless it's styrofoam. And packaging. Most of what gets recycled and can easily be recycled is packaging. So if you're holding some sort of packaging for food or any other sort of thing that you buy, almost always it's recyclable. Amazon seems to be moving more to these paper envelopes that stuff comes for. They used to do the more plastic ones. Those are more difficult to recycle or can't be recycled, but the paper ones can. So things are kind of moving in that direction.
What about paper in general? I mean, obviously not a lot of people have physical newspapers anymore or magazines, but some people still do probably. What about paper?
Yeah, absolutely. It can go right in your bin real easy. And it gets Sunoco, the company I mentioned a second ago, not only do they have a recycling facility where they sort stuff for Raleigh and Durham and a number of other triangle cities, they are actually a company that takes the paper and cardboard and makes other stuff out of it. It's a long list of things. So they're actually looking for that feedstock. Now, newspaper has almost no value as a recyclable, but it can be recycled and often is recycled. What I hear from people who do this, both at the state level and in the private sector, is that, look, even if you've read, oh, there's no market for this, I shouldn't bother recycling. For years, I didn't recycle glass because I had read multiple stories about how crushed glass, there was no market for it. Well, it turns out there's a company in Wilson, North Carolina, that specifically does glass. So it's very local. Even if you see a story in National Geographic about recycling, it might not be as relevant locally because there are companies in the Southeast that are looking for this feedstock. Plastic is another one. There's a company called Unify that's in Greensboro, and they make all sorts of fibers out of recycled plastic. So it's cheaper to get it from my house in Cary and over to Greensboro ultimately, although it's a circuitous route, obviously, than it is to go in some other states.
So we know what we can recycle. What can't we recycle? You mentioned electronics, large items, things with batteries. Explain that.
Yeah, so the battery thing, you can recycle rechargeable batteries, but you have to do it a certain way. You cannot just put those in your bin. And this is really important because there have been fires all over the country in these recycling facilities. A recycling and sorting facility is called a MRF, MRF, manufactured, and of course I can't remember, the F is facility. But there are these big warehouses where not only are people sorting things, but all these machines are sorting things. And some of those machines they're like screws, and it's this really cool industrial process. People, if you go online to WRAL.com and find our story, you'll see these things in action. But one of the things that can happen is the batteries get crushed. And when they get crushed, they can explode. So do not put, like if you have power tools that have a recyclable battery, take that to Home Depot or Lowe's or to one of many in Wake County. There are all sorts of drop-offs for electronic devices. Laptop batteries, again, not in your curbside, but you can recycle it if you just Google your area. There are drop-off places, and again, hardware stores like Lowe's and Home Depot accept these rechargeable batteries.
What about your batteries that are in like your flashlight or your remote control?
I'm not so sure about non-rechargeable batteries. Okay. Again, if you check into your local program,
should be able to say
Home Depot and Lowe's as well. But the rechargeable ones are the ones that cause the fires. That is the real concern.
Gotcha. Well, we will be back after the break with more from Travis Fain on where all the stuff we throw away goes to be recycled. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm talking with Travis Fain about the journey our recycling takes once it leaves our home. Now, one of the questions I think a lot of people have is, okay, this is a business, so these items are being recycled and then in many cases being reused, creating other products. So people are making money off this. Are we doing a good job of this? Are we helping the universe? Are we helping the earth? I
think to some extent, yeah, you are. I mean, just the simple math of it. I mean, are you going to use less stuff? If you're going to use less stuff, then you don't have to recycle. You've already done that. But if you're going to use the stuff, why wouldn't you try at least to recycle it? And you do see a lot of stories about, well, this doesn't get recycled, that doesn't get recycled. I can only tell you what people in the industry tell me. At the Sunoco plant, they said, look, about 20% of what comes through here, so this is stuff that's curbside from a number of cities, shows up. They go through like 500 tons of stuff a day at a plant that runs 24 hours a day. They say 20% of it ends up in the landfill. Now, I'm sure that fluctuates, but that's still 80% that's hopefully getting recycled, that they say is getting recycled. There are definite markets for some of these products. So my story, it was kind of looking at, all right, look, at least here's how you can do your part the best that you can, but recognizing the fact that the best thing you can do if you're worried about this, and you probably should be, is not use it at all. Think about the packaging. How many times you go to a grocery store and you buy one item, maybe it's got a handle, it's milk, and they put it in a bag.
Right.
This literally has a handle. I don't need the bag. And I would just encourage people to think about choices that they make when it comes to packaging. But it's not, we don't make it easy in this world.
And reusing. I mean, reusing is obviously in many ways better than recycling because you're getting multiple uses out of an item, like a glass bottle, for example. You
Absolutely.
might be able to use that. And I've traveled and I've been in other countries where they just don't have the kind of packaging we have. I mean, you order a slice of pizza, they don't even give you a plate when you're in Italy. You get it on like a napkin. And they don't. You ask for plastic utensils. They look at you like you're crazy. So we definitely have an issue with having a lot of extra, like you said, packaging and things that we are throwing away that maybe we can cut back on. Now, you mentioned that 20% goes in the landfill. What is that about? Is it just not able to be recycled?
Yeah, people put the wrong things in bins. That's not the only reason here. I think there are a lot of factors. I mean, anytime you're going through 500 tons of anything, you're going to run into problems. But I mean, when I was at this factory, I saw clothes that had gummed up the machine. People put clothes in their recycling bin. People put shoes. They said, you're going to see shoes today. And I said, what are you talking about? And I saw like 5 shoes.
Yeah.
Just in an hour and a half. I don't know what people are thinking there. There was a bowling ball that at one point someone had tried to recycle.
Oh my gosh.
And so there's lots of stuff like that. The battery thing is such a concern because, again, it's caused multiple fires. You don't want to throw those in the trash. You don't want to throw those in the recycling. You don't want to put them anywhere they can be crushed up.
What was it like there? I mean, you're talking about a major operation, like you said. So how do they separate out the materials, and what does it look like when you're in that facility?
It's pretty cool. It's a series of conveyor belts going up multiple levels. There are people at most of them, so a machine will do the sorting, and it's a little hard to describe. But so one machine is this big screw. And the idea is stuff is going to ride over top of it if it's cardboard, if it's light, if it's large, and the smaller stuff is going to fall through. So that's one way you can separate, say, a smallish plastic bottle from a big cardboard box. One of the problems is, like I said, the clothes, they gum up those screws. Another thing that gums up those screws are people put like grocery bags, like plastic grocery bags, and those get wrapped around those screws. You're supposed to take the grocery bags back to the grocery store. You're also not supposed to bag your recyclables. Some people will put their recyclables in a plastic garbage bag. That is totally unnecessary and causes a problem.
You take the bag to the recycling bin, for example, and you pour it out of the bag. If you're doing it like curbside,
yeah,
for
just
example.
don't put any plastic bags or plastic film in your curbside recycling. That's not where it goes. Again, take that to the grocery store. One really cool machine there is imagine 2 conveyor belts meeting each other, but there's a hole in between them, and so they run electricity through the edge of it, and it makes the aluminum cans jump because of that electricity from one belt to another. The rest of the stuff falls into a hole. So now you've got 2 different streams.
So you're taking the cans out, right?
Right. And at every step, there are people who are like, this,
monitoring
the computer didn't do this right, or the machine didn't do this right. Let me fix it.
What's the most profitable and what's really hard to use?
Aluminum is by far the most profitable and the easiest to recycle. The hardest to use, I think glass, a lot of times, there is a website the state operates that tells you like what the prices are. There's also like almost like a swap meet website the state has for companies that have stuff they want to get rid of and companies that have stuff where they need a feedstock where they can kind of get together. So I spent some time on that. Newsprint, almost no value typically. Glass, very little value, but still recyclable. Plastic can be hard to recycle for reasons that we've talked about before, and there are all sorts of different types of it, but there is some market for that. But aluminum cans, far and away, aluminum is the easiest and most profitable to recycle.
Do you feel like you as a consumer got some clarity here on what you can and cannot recycle?
Yeah, I did. Now, I don't know that I needed to go from my kitchen, look at an orange juice container, into a tour of this building. That might have been overkill, especially since one of the first things I said was how easy this information is to find online. But I mean, that's how I do it sometimes. But yeah, I think I know the places where I was making it too hard. And I know, for example, my neighbor was bagging their recyclables, and we talked about it. And I'm like, all right, well, don't do that anymore.
Right. So you gave them some insight. And again, it would be best if we all used less packaging and reuse things. But if we're going to throw things away, there is this place where it goes where it can be reused or recycled.
Do both. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I think I was taught that when I was a kid, and it, still some of the best advice.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Travis. Look forward to your report. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email that's waiting in your inbox every morning with Triangle news, events, and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.